Texans must do their part on Sunday for a chance to win the AFC South title.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome to the Locked On Texans podcast. I'm credential media member Brian Big Sarge Bearfield, your Texas insider. I want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day and for being an everyday on the show, which is part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. On today's show, we will talk about the Texans have a left guard dilemma. How will they solve that? Texans can win the AFC South with the win and a Colts loss. And I will give you my final predictions on their matchup against the Miami Dolphins. But first, this show is sponsored by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Hey, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? All right, so the Texans have a dilemma. The Texans have a real issue that they have to fix. And it isn't one of those issues where, hey, maybe we'll put a little masking tape on it and it'll get us through. Maybe we'll just try to, put an additional part on it to see if we can make it through until it's time to get it fixed. No, the Texans have a real problem. And the problem that they have is at left guard. And the reason why it's such a big problem is because, yes, you have Laramie Tunsil at the tackle position who protects CJ's blind side, but there's an issue at the left guard position. And that's also CJ's blind side. Now, of course, we know that, when he takes a snap, he can see what's in front of him. But if he doesn't have some consistency, which that has been an issue for the Houston Texans this entire season, if he's still having that inconsistency at that left guard position, it's still going to hamper him and it's still going to open him up to the delayed blitz and the stunts that these teams have been deploying against him this season. And so with Juice Scruggs going down with injury, because we know Jared Patterson moved to center when Juice Scruggs moved to left guard because left guard Kenyon Green went down. And so now Juice Scruggs is projected to be out for the next 3 games with a foot injury, which puts the Houston Texans back into the same dilemma in which they were. Starting out the season, you had Kenyon Green there, and then he was pulled for production because he was not producing on the field. You put Jared Patterson in there. He was only able to play 1 play, and then he suffered a concussion, which brought Kenyon Green back into the game. He played. Then on October 31st, Halloween against the Jets, he got hurt. They had to pull him out. They put in I think Jared Patterson may have been back by that time where they put in Kendrick Green, but they had to put a replacement in there because he was out. Then he went on the IR, and that's when the Texans offensive line shifted a little bit with Patterson going to center and Juice Scruggs going to left guard. And it had been working. It had been working over the last 2 games that they had that center left guard combination. But now with Juice going down, it leaves them open to trying to put somebody back there, even with Kenyon Green designated to return from injured reserve. But on Thursday, Bobby Slowick had this to say about the absence of Juice Scruggs and about Kenyon Green.
It's really no different no matter who's there. Like we just have to get to a point where we execute consistently, and that's where it was awesome. And Juice is probably where he's growing the most, going from center to guard and having to handle that's a big move. That's a lot of different things going on, and just honing in on his responsibility, what he needed to do and how to do it, and to do it well enough. Showed on tape, and whoever it is for us all the way across the front 5, like that's our big emphasis. Like, let's go out, let's execute, let's play the kind of football we know we can play. Yeah, I mean, the first thing for him is he's got to get healthy, and I know he's working really hard to do that. It's been a tough stretch with what he's had to deal with injury-wise, really all the way back to college. I know it's been something that he's been working on. He's been fighting, and that's really the first step for him. Like let's make sure we're getting healthy. We're feeling like we're 100% to go play and let it rip. And then same as I already mentioned for the rest of the O-line, like continue to build consistency and execution, which he's had bright spots of. He's shown that through the course of the year, but like everyone on our team and on our offense, there's been highs and there's been lows as we go through that. So this is just the constant build.
Looks like Bobby and I are on the same page. He mentioned consistency on more than one occasion, but when he was talking about Kenyon Green, he said we need Kenyon Green to get healthy. He's designated for return. He has not been activated just yet. They have not activated him, and they have not activated linebacker Christian Harris, and so that probably won't come until Saturday, when the latest is for them to activate them on Saturday, and we'll definitely get an update, and we'll definitely let the everydayers know who's going, if Kenyon Green is activated and if Christian Harris is activated. But if Kenyon Green comes back, right? If Kenyon Green comes back, does he start? Do you put him right back at his spot? Because there's an old saying in the NFL that you shouldn't lose your job to injury. You shouldn't lose, if you're a starter, you shouldn't lose your job to injury. But by the same token, with the injury and with the lack of production that Kenyon Green was having on the field, that combination may cause the Houston Texans to go in a different way. And if they do go in a different way, and it also could be that they want to give Kenyon Green another week to get healthy. If he does come back, if he is activated and he doesn't play, or he doesn't start, he doesn't play, maybe they're giving him another week to get healthy and have him just in case of emergency. Because they picked up Zach Thomas last month in November. They claimed him off of waivers after he was waived from the New England Patriots, and he's normally his real position is tackle, but he can play at the guard position. Now, I know in college he only played 2 games at the guard position, but the Houston Texans seen enough to think that they could slide him right into that position and to be able to help. But if not, maybe we'll see Kendrick Green. Could there be a Kendrick Green sighting? Whoever's going to be there, they need to have been practicing with CJ all week long. Whoever's going to be there, they need to get that position solidified, because when you're playing against a team like the Miami Dolphins, and I know their defense hasn't been the best this year. Their defense hasn't been the best. Their interior is pretty good. And if you're having some inconsistencies, because you think about it now, with Juice being out and Patterson being at the center position, now he still has to get used to playing with whoever's going to be on the left side of him. He's never played with Kenyon Green on a consistent basis. He hasn't played with Zach Thomas on a consistent basis, and he may have played more snaps with Kendrick Green last season than any of them. But however it goes, the Houston Texans are heading into the final quarter of their season. And if you're still trying to figure that out and get that done, then you are putting yourself behind the 8 ball. You're putting yourself in a position to say, if we make it to the playoffs, something may not be, CJ may not feel comfortable. You can't keep getting him hit. You can't keep allowing him to take sacks, and you cannot keep having pressure in his face. Because if so, the Houston Texans are going to have a real big issue to end the season. They end with the Miami Dolphins. They end with the Kansas City Chiefs. They end with the Baltimore Ravens. And then they have to come back and play against the Tennessee Titans, who they're not playing for anything but to beat the Texans. They don't care if they win any other game. They just want to beat the Houston Texans. And that comes from the owner on down. So the Houston Texans definitely need to solidify that left guard position with Juice being out for the next 3 games so they can have some consistency. Because if they do that going into Sunday and they win that game, they've done their part as far as moving towards winning their second consecutive AFC South title in the last 2 games. They need some help. We'll talk about that after the break. Today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. If you love watching the game, you're going to love Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy. Whether it's football, basketball, or any of your favorite sports, Prize Picks makes your holidays bigger and brighter. You can now win up to 200 times your money on Prize Picks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picmas and offering 2 free picks in December. And when your picks hit, Prize Picks makes it easy to cash out. You can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly when you play just $5. Prize Picks, run your game. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. It's guaranteed perfection in every single bite, and right now you can save on unforgettable gifts with 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, score an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages featuring gourmet favorites. From legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide for a limited time at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. Minimum purchase may apply. Battle Red Nation, welcome back to the Locked On Texans podcast. So the Texans are in a real good situation. And for as much as people want to talk about the way that they've played this year, and I know, look, we didn't like the way they played against the New York Jets. We didn't like the way that they played in the second half against the Detroit Lions. Definitely didn't like the way that they played against the Tennessee Titans. But they're still in position to win the AFC South. And they can do that with the win on Sunday against the Miami Dolphins. But they're going to need a little help. They're going to need a little help. And it's funny. It's funny because last season, the Texans had to go to week 18 to have a win and end game. And the team that they had to beat to get into the playoffs is the exact same team that they need to lose on Sunday to the Denver Broncos. The Houston Texans beat the Dolphins on Sunday, and the Indianapolis Colts, yeah, that team. Yeah, I know. It's that team that does not like. Side note, it's the Texans division, right? The Texans division is one of those divisions where they truly have a hatred, and I'm talking about from the fan base to some of the players towards the other teams. Like the Texans don't particularly care for the Tennessee Titans. The Titans don't particularly care for the Texans. The Colts don't care for the Texans. The Texans don't care for the Colts. And with the what happened 2 weeks ago in the Jacksonville Jaguars game, now Jacksonville fans can't stand the Houston Texans, especially with the hit that Azeez Al-Shaair put on Trevor Lawrence that has him suspended for the next 3 games. There's this genuine hatred inside of the AFC South. So if the Texans win and the Colts lose, they will clinch the AFC South. Not only will they clinch the AFC South, it's that bragging rights thing. It's the bragging rights that the Houston Texans want. It's the bragging rights that CJ Stroud can go and tell linebacker for the Colts, Zaire Franklin, I told you we were different. I told you that it ain't all sweet over here no more. I told you, for those of you all who are listening, let me tell you, they have a saying where it say, walk in your trap, take over your trap. And that's what the Houston Texans have done the last 2 years to the Indianapolis Colts. And so with the Colts matchup against the Broncos are a very good team. They are a very good team. And they're also in the wild card hunt. They are also, if the playoffs ended today, they would be in the playoffs, in the AFC playoffs. And so now they're playing for wild card position. There's no way that they can win the division. You know, the top 4 teams are the division winners. And if the Houston Texans win the AFC South, of course, they're going to solidify their spots. Now it gets to moving a little bit with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is still in there, and the Texans have an opportunity because Pittsburgh currently sits at number 2. And if the season plays out in a certain type of way, they could also jump up from that 4th position to the 2nd position. And then you'll see, you know, of course, a home playoff game, but it may make the path a little bit easier for what they're looking for. Because I think now if you stay on that trajectory, their week 16 matchup is against the Kansas City Chiefs. And in the playoffs, if they win their first wild card game, which could potentially be against their week 17 matchup, the Baltimore Ravens, if they defeat them, they may end up playing the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I don't have the brackets on me yet, and there's a lot of projected brackets that they have out there, but that's how that road to the AFC Championship is going to look for the Houston Texans if they stay in their current position. So the Texans, by winning the AFC South on Sunday, would check off the box. And I think that it would make that matchup between Kansas City and Baltimore, which they have those 2 games that they play in a 5-game stretch. I think it'll make it easier for them to get themselves prepared, already knowing that we've already taken care of this. And not only that, side note, you want to win in front of your home crowd. You want to win and beat the Miami Dolphins in front of your home crowd at NRG Stadium, because you also need that boost. You also need that confidence. And if you can go into the next week, the Colts lose to the Broncos, you can go into that next week as AFC South champions. And then when you come back to play at home on Christmas Day against the Baltimore Ravens, some of calling that the Beyonce Bowl, not Sarge. Some people are. But if they can come back and play that Baltimore Ravens team on Christmas Day at NRG Stadium and can get a win from that, what they're able to do in those last 2 weeks, even though those games are condensed, even though those games are together, what they can do in those last 2 weeks, start putting together a scouting report. Start putting together a scouting report. Maybe not so much on Kansas City, because Kansas City was pretty much locked up the number 1 seed. So not so much on Kansas City, definitely on Baltimore, because the Houston Texans and the Baltimore Ravens will still be playing for something, but they definitely need to do that. Now, some of you all may be asking yourself, but Sarge, what happens if the Colts and the Texans end at 9-8, they have the same record at the end of the season, right? What if they both end 9-8? Well, it doesn't matter, because the Texans will still win the AFC South, because they come closer to whatever apparatus you're listening to me on, or whatever you're watching me on. Come close, come close, come close. The Texans swept the Colts. I'm sorry if you don't know what swept means. That means that in the 2 games that they played against them, the Texans beat them both times. The Texans are 2-0 against the Indianapolis Colts this season. So they can end with the same record, and they're the only team. They're the only team in the AFC South that can catch the Texans. That's it. The Texans will have to go on a losing streak, and they would have to go on a winning streak. But they're the only team in the AFC South that can catch the Texans, because Jacksonville has been eliminated. Tennessee Titans have been eliminated from playoff contention. It's the only team. And so the Texans can win the AFC South by letting everything just play out, but it'll be so much better if they can get it done in week 15. So that way they can start preparing themselves for the playoffs. So they can start preparing themselves in order to, maybe help some other people put some other people into the game to help them get a little bit more reps to see what we're going to have, or what we're going to, what they will need, what they will have going into the playoffs, because we all know that the playoffs is a war of attrition. whichever team is the healthiest is pretty much who's going to win it all. If you go back and you look at the past Super Bowl winners, the one thing that gave them the advantage was health. You stay healthy in the playoff times when it's a one game elimination. But if you're healthy and you have everybody clicking, I'm just saying, the Texans, outside of the people that they have lost for the year, like wide receiver Stephon Diggs, like slot corner, corner safety Jalen Petrie, we know they're not going to get them back. But if they clinch on Sunday, then going into these next game, now maybe they can give Jimmy Ward a break at that nickel position and play more of Miles Bryant. Maybe they can get Damian Pierce in the game a little bit more, or Dare Ugabawale at the running back position, and let Joe Mixon get himself, a break. Maybe you could see what you have more in wide receivers, Xavier Hutchinson and John Mechie, and how they can be used and utilized in the playoffs. But it all starts on Sunday against the Miami Dolphins. And the Houston Texans have to do their part. I'm going to give you my keys to victory when we come back from the break. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you for making the Locked On Texans podcast your first listen of today. Now, for your second listen, go find Locked On NFL now with 2 shows every day. First, the Madman. Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL Espresso, and then stop by the barber shop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. All right, I had the honor and the pleasure of being on the Locked On Dolphins podcast. We do a crossover here, and with Kyle Krabs, and he asked me my keys to victory. Make sure you go and check out that Thursday edition of that crossover episode, because some of the things that I mentioned was Nico and CJ need to play catch, and if they play catch, then everything else will open up for them. And if everything else opens up for them, guess who else it opens it up for? Oh, you want to know? Don't worry about it. I got you. We got time. I'm going to tell you. My 3 keys to victory for the Houston Texans is, 1, the running game is a must. The running game is a must. And we talked earlier in the show about who's going to be at that left guard position, but it should not matter because all the running plays are the same. And you know that who's ever there, you need to get out in your and do your zone blocking scheme. You need to make sure that you got a body on a body and you can get to that second level, because Joe Mixon, who is in Pro Bowl consideration, even though he missed some time this year with the ankle injury, he's one of those running backs that can always see the back cut. He can always see the back cut. He can always see he says he runs in the dark until he sees the light. And what he means by the light is when he's running, he can always recognize that there's a hole that he can get through. And so what the Houston Texans offensive line needs to do is to make sure that they become road graders against the Dolphins. And what I mean by that is put a body on a body, move them out the way so that Joe Mixon can operate, and so Joe Mixon can work. He has been one of the bright spots for the Houston Texans offense this year, and he's been one of the most consistent bright spots for the Houston Texans. I know that there's been games where it looked like he, wasn't having a good game, and that was also due to some of the offensive line play and him, trying to make things happen. There's been some times, but for the most part, Joe Mixon has been very good this season. And so if you get Joe Mixon going, if you get him going early, he'll definitely keep running often and more and more. He's one of those running backs where he gets stronger as the game goes on. There aren't but a few running backs in the NFL who are like that. San Francisco 49ers running back Christian McCaffrey, when he's healthy, he's one of those running backs that gets better as the game goes on. Saquon Barkley for the Philadelphia Eagles, he's another one of those running backs that as the game goes on, he just wears you down and just keeps, getting yards here, getting yards there, to the point where by the fourth quarter, your defense is tired of trying to tackle him. Derrick Henry from the Baltimore Ravens, he's the exact same way. Joe Mixon is one of those running backs who does that, who will put wear and tear on your defense, and come the fourth quarter, they don't want to have to try to hit him. They don't want to have to try to catch him. And if he gets himself going in the running game, you can see him being very effective also in the passing game. I believe that this is also a game that the Houston Texans should use Dare Ogunbowale a little bit more. Get him involved in the passing game. I don't know if I want to make him in a consistent third down back, like they did earlier in the year, because I still want Joe Mixon on the field third downs. If you're not going to hand the ball off to him, you can at least swing it to him in the flats. And so this is a game where the running game is a must. And I think that with that running game, if the running game gets going early, I think we will finally see a Tank Dell sighting. This is a young man that the city of Houston is rooting for. We know the adversity that he's been through in his first 2 seasons in the NFL. You remember him getting hurt against, against the Denver Broncos in week 7, if I'm not mistaken, and then being out for the rest of the year. We know the adversity he went through in the offseason when he was trying to help other patrons at a nightclub and ended up being shot himself, all while just trying to be a good Samaritan. Dealing with the psychological and the mental things of just trying to get himself back on the field from the injury and from the incident. And this season, I don't know what's been going on outside of the inconsistency on the offensive line, maybe some of the play calling, maybe some of the fact that Tank Dell hasn't looked as sharp as he did in his rookie season, the first part of his rookie season. But he is a very, very vital part of getting the Houston Texans over the hump. In the divisional game last season against the Baltimore Ravens, the Houston Texans had them tied 10-10 at the half. And then, like we said earlier, the playoffs is about a war of attrition. The Baltimore Ravens were healthier. The Houston Texans were not at the wide receiver position. They missed Tank Dell a lot. And so this season has been a very inconsistent season as far as, catches, targets, receiving yards, touchdowns, has been concerned. As far as that concern has been going, as far as him being in those things, they have to get him going. They have to make sure that Tank Dell is clicking on all cylinders heading into the playoffs. And what better way to do that than coming off the bye week, talking with Tank. CJ and Tank are best friends. They're 2 peas in a pot. They talk often. They talk a lot. And I'm pretty sure they got together over the break and talked to each other and said, this is what we need to do to get back on the same page. We already know what Nico's going to do on one side. And I'm not saying force feed the ball to Tank against the Dolphins. I'm not saying force feed. But what I'm saying is let him have a little bit more targets than he normally has. Let him know that you're still a vital part of this offense, and we want you and we need you. And so if you get the running game going, you get Tank Dell going, then on the defensive side of the ball, you have to hit Tua early and often. Yes, I know that Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa is playing some of the best football he has played in his career. I know that he's getting the ball out of his hands quicker than he has at any point in time of his career. I know that he's not always looking for the explosive plays anymore downfield and is taking what the defense is giving him. I understand that. I understand that by him doing that, even when he missed time and he came back, he's one of the reasons why Jonnu Smith is tight end for the Dolphins. Jonnu Smith is doing what he's doing. He's also getting the ball to Waddle in space. He's also getting the ball to Tyreek Hill in space and letting them operate and use their speed. But he's also prone to turn the ball over if he gets hit early and often, and if there's pressure in his face. One of the things that he does not like to do is he doesn't mind getting hit. He does not like getting hit. And with his concussion history, he's making sure now that he's taking care of himself from taking big hits. But by doing that, he's also suspect to throw one or two interceptions. He may throw the ball a little too quick, and you can't throw the ball quick when you got Derek Stingley on the field, even Kamari Lassiter or Kalen Bullock, because Derek has 4 interceptions, Kamari has 3 interceptions, and Kalen Bullock has 4 interceptions. They're aggressive ball hawks. So what they'll do is they're trying to force Tua into making a mistake. And that's going to start with the defensive line, that defensive front for the Houston Texans, with Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter. And then you throw in Danico Autry, you throw in Fola Fatukasi, you throw in Tim Settle Jr., who is having by far his best season of his NFL career, who loves playing for DeMeco Ryans, loves playing in this offense, playing in this defense. And so you hit Tua, hit him early, hit him often, force him into making mistakes, and then I feel like, drum roll, please, the Houston Texans will win the game. The Houston Texans will defeat the Miami Dolphins by a score of 30-21. You heard it here first, right on Locked On Texans. All right. Make sure you follow me on the app formerly known as Twitter at Big Star Sports with the Z, and make sure that you are subscribed to the Locked On Texans podcast and to the Locked On Texans YouTube channel. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.